I would hesitate to suggest any model for Malaysia, simply because while not trying to suggest that Malaysia is entirely unique or special, as much as we like to think we are special, we are not special. I also think that the solutions will have to arise from the context of the political and social development we are seeing in Malaysia today. Malaysians have to decide their own future. But I think Malaysians have also got to realize that whatever they do and whatever they decide will have a cost, and the cost will be a historical one. The decisions we make now, like all the decisions we make, will have a lasting historical impact, especially when it's dealing with this question of where Malaysia is going to head and what sort of model of society we're going to have. You can build a country entirely on racism if you want to. You can, but not without paying a cost. You pay a cost. The cost will come. Sooner or later, the bill will arrive. You can look, if you look at the world in our lifetime, we've seen experiments where you've had entire nation states constructed on completely false, pseudo-scientific, pseudo-historical theories of racial difference, the whole apartheid project, and it was perpetuated for decades and centuries, in fact. But the price of that, I think immoral, unethical social experiment is something that not only that generation pays, but the generations that come after. Malaysians have to realize that we are not simply striking off multiple choice answers in some exam here. These choices, when it comes to, it's not like choosing whether you want a cheeseburger or fries or what have you. We are deciding what sort of society we hope to build in the future. And the point raised several times, in fact, which I think he raised as well, is this disconnect then between the younger voices. The young man who wants to be Prime Minister, well, according to your calculation, if every Prime Minister lasts for 7 terms, I think you have a long wait before you get to be one. But that's precisely the sort of inertia that we are talking about. Again, it's not unique to Malaysia. We see this all over the region. Interestingly enough, the older the politician, the more he talks about the need for reform, but not him. And it's just the demographics of Southeast Asia today, and I think India as well, where we see this younger population that is not prepared to wait. How long do you wait before these changes, these institutional changes take place? Now here, I can't predict what's going to happen. But like I said, it's almost like physics. It's when two forces basically come, in conflict with each other. Either we find a way to actually reconcile these differences, and one gives way to the other, or we run the risk of either, on the one hand, having a society that basically doesn't necessarily fall apart or engages in conflict, but where people who are frustrated with the official position taken by institutions seek other avenues, other ways to further themselves occupationally, situationally, to become socially mobile. And that would be sad. I think what we're looking at Southeast Asia today is basically protests in all sorts of forms, including, by the way, migration, which is a very old mode of Southeast Asian protests. You don't fight the king, you just pack your belongings in the sampan, you go and sail off to the next kingdom if life is better there. Now, today, of course, the Malaysian political elite talks about bringing back talent, Malaysian talent and all that, but why have these people left in the first place? They've left precisely because of the concerns raised, especially being raised now by the younger generation. Where are our opportunities? Where is our place in society? Where is the place in the official history for me? Why do I not see myself represented in the national narrative? And if the answer does not come, the communicative infrastructure that we have in the world today makes resistance, passive resistance, much easier than ever before, whether it's the internet or whether it's just packing your bags and moving to another place to find a new life. The state has to realize that the age of the old dictatorships of Southeast Asia are over. You will not have another Marcos. You will not have another Suharto. The age where generals can just take their tanks out and shoot people in the streets are over. Look at what's going on in Burma now. That's over as well. So that change has to come. My concern when it comes to Malaysia specifically is to go back to the point raised by the man with political ambitions, is practically everyone we know, or whose faces are on the political map of Malaysia, These faces go back 30, 40 years. Some of them have been in politics longer than I've been born. And you know, so that tells you how long they've been there, and the positions are not being vacated. So think of it in, you know, through other examples and metaphors. It's like a company. If the same guy refuses to leave the CEO post, you know, I mean, basically as simple as that. You know, if you want the Malaysian project as a project to succeed, then, you know, pragmatism comes into it. And this goes back to the earlier point about the teaching of history in this country. For too long, the historical narratives of Malaysia, I believe, have been perhaps written with a very strong official bias. Now again, you can do that. You can write a completely official history. My complaint always has been that official histories of Southeast Asia, like many post-colonial official histories, have another bias. Apart from the ethnic bias, there's always been a gender bias. It's always the history of men. It's men. It's general this, captain that, colonel this, king this, sultan that. It's just men. You read the histories of Southeast Asia, you think that there were no women in Southeast Asia. You know, it's only yesterday, like mushrooms, suddenly women popped up. Now why? Because histories are written by men, and for the longest time, these official histories reflect their subjective male biases. No, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can keep writing histories with only men in it. Only men in it. You can do that for the next 100 years. But then don't complain if half your population will not read that history because they don't find themselves represented in that. See, the age of the hegemonic state is, I think, being challenged in Southeast Asia. In the past, it's easy. You have the gun, you have the army, you have your coercive state apparatus that can force people to do that. But the game changes, since suddenly that's become a new term as of 2 days ago. The game changers that have come to Southeast Asia are all there for us to see. At no point in recent history have all Southeast Asians had so much access to alternative information. We've created parallel communicative infrastructure in Southeast Asia, which is astounding. At no point in recent Southeast Asian history have Southeast Asians traveled within the region as much as we do today because of cheap airlines, cheap flights, cheap travel. This means that, you know, we are communicating and we are moving. And this means the age where the state can, you know, control its people, like I can control water in this glass, is gone. Because the borders of the state are no longer solid, they're porous. Information comes in and out, ideas come in and out, people move in and out. So to go back to the lament of the young politicians now, when will you know, these avenues be open for me? If you're going to wait for the old guys to retire, and if everyone's going to take 7 terms each to become Prime Minister, then I think you're probably waiting like 150 years before you can become Prime Minister. But now in this overpopulated climate of Malaysian society and politics today, what we see is new opportunity structures. They might account for why so many young people are going into NGOs and civil society, alternative media, because basically the old structures refuse to change. Okay, fine, we'll bypass it. We'll go around it. And this is where states, if they are not careful, if they remain intransigent and entrenched and ossified, then, you know, like mummies, like petrified trees, you know, they will just become redundant. And there, I am a bit sad and worried because I still believe that despite all its flaws and weaknesses, you know, the nation state still has a role to play. But I just wish to see more imagination among the political elite of this generation, because if they're not going to do this, then the nation state becomes less and less relevant to people. It's not just in Malaysia, it's not just even in Southeast Asia. This is what we're seeing in Europe as well. The nation state is becoming irrelevant because it's not reflecting the realities on the ground. And I think this is part and parcel of the whole you know, situation that we find ourselves in today, living, like I said, in this age of late industrial capitalism. The point about the caliphate and all that, I'm more interested in the politics of those who demand the caliphate. Let me be blunt here. In the same way that I don't believe in quick solutions and empty slogans. Likewise, you know, in the 70s, there were people who talked about, you know, transnational socialism or transnational communism, and again, it was a trans-nation state thing. We cannot just appropriate selectively elements of history in order to make claims that, you know, certain political models existed when they did not. If you look at the history of many Muslim kingdoms and polities, even the Ottomans had the office of the Sheikhul Islam and the Wazir, which draws a distinction between religion and state. I seriously doubt if there's ever been such a thing as a caliphate. Maybe in name, yes, but in terms of, in practical terms, no. But I think the fact that people are asking for it today, again, reflects the mood of the world's population now. People are looking for alternatives. And the nation state is really going through a crisis therefore. In the case of Southeast Asia, this is again doubly ironic because the nation state is a relatively new thing. It's not even half a century old and already it's in danger of being redundant.
Thank you. Farish.
This idea of communists being the real people who fought for independence, I think is coined by certain people who want to confuse the people. You have to know something of global politics before you can understand what happened. The British planned the establishment of a nation state for what was known as the Federation of Malaya by 1943. But by then, Russia was becoming more and more powerful. And America was very jittery. America wanted to stop communism from being spread all over the former colonial countries. And America arrived at the decision that the best way to stop communism was to encourage the former colonies to form nation states. And Britain was told by America to be one of the first to show good example. America itself was the first colonial power to free its colony. The Philippines was freed in 1946, India in 47, then Burma. And the British were ready to do something for Malaya. But they could not just leave Malaya when there was going to be turmoil. There was turmoil when the Japanese surrendered. The British had not come back. So the Communist Party of Malaya took control of the country in the middle of August 1945. Now, I was already a little boy at that time, and I remember them very well. They just punish people as and when they like, putting people in gunny sacks and drowning them, hanging them upside down, and asking passers-by to throw stones to them. It was havoc. They had 2 weeks to run the country, and it was havoc. Then the British came back, and there was a big battle and so on.